And we're live. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Every Point is a Winner. Every Point's a Winner here at EPAW. And we're going to go through our tips for tonight, tomorrow night, and all weekend. We have 8 games of the Indigenous round. And we pay homage to all those Indigenous players and people that follow the game all around Australia and all parts of the world, and particularly the Pacific. Okay, so tonight's first game is a classic rip-tearing game, you would imagine. Storm, who are $1.55 versus the Broncos at $2.46. Now, this game, I believe it is in Melbourne's home territory, so the Amy Stadium here. Alec McDonald is in, Kane Bradley in, Trent Liero in, Jaden Hunt for the Broncos is in, and Payne Huss. That's a good inclusion. Unfortunately, Xavier Willison may not be back until possibly the final series with a big brace on his arm. Jack Howarth is also out. Lazarus Vialipu is out. So, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to all those lovely subscribers and tipsters. If you haven't got a paper and pen, just put these value tips down. We will not give you odds on for any of the lead legs, which are your first and second bankers. They're your 2 main tips going forward. And then your 4 legs after that, you have a reserve leg, and then you have second, third, fourth, fifth, 3 legs after that, and you intertwine them with your first 2 standouts. So that's how we do the parlays here. Usually we'll try and have them for $1.50 to $2, maximum $2.50 if they're really the doubles are short. Our main target is to get the doubles up first, and then if we've got any luck in the second part of the game, the second half, if you've got a third leg running, you're just cheering them home. And there's some of those 3-leggers with some of the value standout legs with the bankers will give you really, really good value. Sometimes we might have a 4-legger, but very rarely here. I did a lot of research last year after looking at my betting for the whole year, and 4-leggers are just too hard to get. You can get them if you know that there's going to be a massive amount of tries to the side you're tipping, and that way you've got more of a chance of getting it. But if it's a tight game like this one could be tonight, I would suggest to you that 2-leggers are the way to go, and 3-leggers at maximum. All right, so looking at the matchups here, it looks like Utaka Mano is coming onto the starting bench here in the forwards. And going back to the bench here, it's Billy Walters, of course, Hetherington, Tolty, who had a big game last week, excuse me. Excuse me, those cookies were very delicious. Thank you, Adriana. Tui Kamakamiko is in the bench. And Lasardi also, it looks like Peasant is also on the bench there with Joe Chan. Jaden Hunt, Tolty, Hetherington, and as I said before, Billy Walters on the bench there. This is going to be a pretty tough match. Trent Liero goes back and is up against Patrick Carrigan. And then you have Elise Katoa up against, or Elias Katoa up against Jordan Ricky. There's some great matchups here. Bloor against Grabowski. Payne Huss up against Josh King. Hunt against Grant. Corey Jensen up against Utaka Mano. Geez, it could be a really tough tackling match, this one. Oh, I heard a couple of tips from Gus Gould, and he thinks it could be a runaway either way. I think that's sort of sitting on the fence. I think this game's, I can't see it being a runaway for either side. There may be a lot of open play, but I can't see either side thrashing like he was tipping, so we won't worry about his tips. Let's go across and look for the value here for the TAB. And it's $1.55 Melbourne head-to-head 245, a little bit more generous there for Brisbane on the TAB line. And we'll click on that and go to the anytime try scorer. Of course, running second on the ladder is Melbourne, and running sixth in a vital position with a chance of getting further up the ladder. There is that 4-point gap there between fourth, fifth, and sixth. So, important game for Broncos. Last time they played, Melbourne put the Washers, or put the Broncos through the Washers 50-12. Hopefully, it's not a repeat there for Scotty, who's a crazy, one of our commentators here on EPAW, who's a big fan. It's a big night for him. Let's have a look at the try scorers here. Xavier Coates is opening up the market at $1.75. Grant Anderson $1.85. Kane Bradley $1.85. Pappenhausen is out to $2.05. He hasn't got over for a while after sporting an injury. And Selwyn Cobbo came back for his run on the wing last weekend and scored. He's $2.30, so that's good value. Dean Marron at $2.30. Reece Walsh $2.60. Elise Qatar $2.50. Come in all day $2.50. Ezra Mann threes. Katoni Staggs still good value. They're at $3.10. Nick Meaney $3.10, and anyone else. You got Harry Grant at $3.75. Grabowski $3.75, and you're going out to the forwards then. You've got Ricky at $3.75. That's a little bit skinny for him. He's not your prolific try scorer. Adam Reynolds at $5.50. That's pretty good value looking at that. Josh King $6.50. Trent Liero $6.50. Yeah, most of your forwards, including Payne Huss, is about $8.50 here. Patrick Carrigan at $8.50. Tua Kamika is 9-1, and Alec McDonald at 9-1. Kobe Hetherington at 10s, and then write your ticket the rest. Okay, let's pick out some good standouts here. Going to go and try and find a prolific try scorer. Katoni Staggs, I'd like to stand out at $3.10. That's really good value. He's been playing out of his skin, but I'm going to go with a tried true star here for the Melbourne Storm at $2.50. And we're going to go for Elisa Katoa, or Elise Katoa. $2.50 is our first standout banker there. Then we're going to go across to the Broncos, and we're going to have Shibasaki. He let us down last week, but I think he's going to be fed the ball a lot more this game. So $2.90 Shibasaki is our standout there with the Melbourne Elise Katoa. Now for our third leg, we're going to go Katoni Staggs. He hasn't let us down since he's been in form over the last 5 or 6 games. For our fourth leg, we're going to check in Jack Grabowski at $3.75 at pretty good odds there. And then we're going to have a bit of a punt here. For our fifth leg, we're going Adam Reynolds at $5.50 for the Broncos, and Billy Walters. I want to put him in as the reserve along with a Melbourne player. Billy Walters at 5-1. And for Melbourne, we're going to chuck in Harry Grant at $3.75. They're your 2 reserves. Now, that's if you have any extra money from last week, you can actually chuck them in along with your 2 main bankers. All right, let's move along to the next match, and that's tomorrow, Newcastle versus Penrith. Well, with that Melbourne-Brisbane game, I've been tossing up and turning about it all day, thinking that Melbourne may have the wood on the Broncos, though I really want to tip Brisbane here, even though they're the outsiders. I really want to, because I want to see them stand up. I'm really fearful that Melbourne will have a scorcher of a game. They nearly blew that game against Parramatta last week, but Parramatta threw everything at them, bar the kitchen sink. But we're going to tip Brisbane here at 1-12. I think it's going to be a tight match. I'd love to see it go to extra time, in fact, but stranger things have happened. If the old Brisbane from last year stand up, then they're going to get absolutely towered up by Melbourne. And Melbourne can do that to you at home. All right, so there you go. There's our tips, and we'll move on to the next match. It is Newcastle versus Penrith. Newcastle's coming up at 4:30. Bradman Best is coming back, $1.22. Not much skinnier you can get there for Penrith. They've been on fire, and they were lucky to get away with that Gold Coast victory last weekend. Oh, that coffee's nice. Thank you, Robert Timms, even though you're not a sponsor. Okay, let's have a look at the ins and outs. That's really important going forward here. I know that Bradman is coming back from a slight knee injury. We're just looking at the ins and outs of this game. Team lists and ins and outs. So still at fullback there, covering at fullback is Dane Gagai. Bradman Best is back. Saliza Lamona is in. Jake Arthur, I think on debut. Matthew Arthur, don't know how many Arthurs there are. Matthew Eisenhuth for Penrith. Maverick Guy, Paul Alamotti is back, and Scott Sorensen. That's a massive inclusion for Penrith there. He's an amazing defender and a hardcore attacker, Sorensen. But, yeah, there was one game, I think he scored a double, which was like 1,000-to-1 odds if you took it. That was before his injury. So let's go to the matchups here. And Dominic Young's up against Milky Jenkins there, Thomas Jenkins. And then you get Isaac Tago up against Fletcher Hunt. A lot of inexperience, of course, in Newcastle. They're laden down with injuries, not as much as South or the Dolphins, however, or New Zealand. Frizzell is on the interchange, which is interesting. Matt Croker. They've got some good interchange bench there. Thomas Kant. And as I said, Tyson Frizzell earlier. And then Saluza Lium is Elijah Saluza Sium. I haven't heard of him before. He's also on the interchange bench. Sorensen for Penrith. Eisenhuth, Henry, Brad Schneider. He's very good sub. They've got a good sub bench. There's no doubt about it, Penrith. I think they'll be very, very hard to beat here. Although it is McDonald's Stadium, don't think it's going to be an easy victory for Penrith, but I think they'll scrape across the line. I don't think it'll be 13 plus, even though a lot of people will instantly take 13 plus. I think Newcastle will at least raise a big effort here against the, even though their season is done and dusted, they certainly don't want to be fighting out over the wooden spoon. So $1.22 and $4.35. Let's see if it's any different on the TAB. And $4.30 on the TAB and $1.22, so even shorter on the TAB, Penrith. So McDonald's Jones Stadium. Just take note, folks, put this down in your black book, that it is raining. It's starting to rain partially in Sydney at the moment. There's a few showers around, so put that into your calculations, probably half your bets. That's the way to go here. Don't go berserk, because look what happened to a lot of the ball last week. Some of the ball handling was atrocious, especially in the Bulldogs game, and that wasn't good for us since we tipped them. But in any case, congratulations to West Tigers, who were much better in the wet. Now, last time they played, it was a surprise victory to Newcastle Knights, would you believe, in round 12 of this year. It was 25-6, Newcastle Knights over Penrith. I barely remember that. It was so long ago now. I know they had a couple of good wins early in the season, but then they just fell off the edge of the world. Okay, let's look at the first try scorers here. Thomas Jenkins, anytime try scorers. Thomas Jenkins, $1.70. Brian To'o, $1.70, a little bit skinny there. Paul Alamotti, $1.80. Casey McLean, $2.30. We're going to lead out with him straight away, Casey McLean. He's been so good to us over the last 3 weeks. And I think it'll be 4 straight weeks where Casey McLean. I'm really impressed with this young lad. Fast, elusive on the feet, strong as an ox. And if you can put him into a half gap, he'll accelerate like a Benji Marshall type or a Fletcher Sharp. Casey McLean there as our main banker for Penrith. Now, I'm not going to go in on the grouter and tip Dylan Edwards because the last 3 games I haven't had him. But I do want to swing back towards Blaze Talungi here. He scored 2 tries last week, and we usually have him, but we didn't have him last week, unfortunately. So I'm going to go back on to Blaze Talungi here. Blaze Talungi at 280 is very good value for our other banker, our second banker. Now, our third banker, we're going to go for Liam Martin here because he's really good, juicy, succulent odds at 3-1. Liam Martin 3-1 there. Then we're chucking in for the 4th leg, Fletcher Hunt at 4-1 there. Fletcher Hunt. And for our 5th leg, it'd be remiss of me to switch off Nathan Cleary since we tipped him last week and he won the game for them, virtually taking that game into extra time. 4-1, that's pretty good value there for Nathan Cleary. As a reserve, I would lean back towards Newcastle because you won't get Greg Marshew at odds like that for a long, long time to come. $2.40, and if I put a proverbial gun to my head, I would also chuck in Dylan Edwards as the reserve along with Greg Marshew there. So there you go. That's our second game out of the way. Now, the second game for the Friday night match, it's the last game, and that's at 8:02. It's Canberra versus Manly. This is another tough game. This is, ladies and gentlemen, a very, very tough round. But Canberra have come up short here on the TAB at $1.45 and Manly at $2.75. They look flat as a biscuit last week, Manly, and I don't know what the answer is for them. It's a game that they have to win, and Canberra, for mine, really have to win it as well to prove that they haven't fallen off the rails totally. They're still leading the competition, but they need to stand up here and remember how hard it was when they lost that grand final back in the 80s, was it not? Was it late 80s when they lost to Manly? When they was their first time they ever got into the grand final and Manly towed them up. If they can use that as vengeance, I think this will be a really good playoff. Okay, let's go over to the team list, which is really important. And it is down in Canberra by the looks of it here. Team list, here we go. Ins and outs, and it's Ethan Sanders back in for Canberra. Then it is Manatu Waitiri, Noah Martin, and Trey Mooney is back. I heard rumours that Trey Mooney may be going to St George along with Adam Dewey, but they're just rumours at this stage. Manly, we've got Aaron Shoup back in, Caleb Navali, Gordon Can-Chan-Tong, Ken Kuntong is back, Joey Walsh, Michael Chikan, and Siamoni Liafi, sorry if I'm saying that wrong, Liafi for the Eagles. And out is Ben Travojevic and Lei Hopewadi. I think Ben Travojevic also went off of that HIA last week. And, of course, you have the mandatory week off on the sideline with Lehigh Hopewadi there. Okay, so looking at the matchups here, it's Kyle Weeks up against Tom Travojevic. They've moved him back to fullback and he's staying at fullback at this stage. Seems to be moving a little bit more freely and he needs to. Jed Stewart up against Jason Saab. A little bit of a class defect there. And then Tolatal Kola, he's been outstanding for us EPAW tipsters here. Matthew Timiko's got us the last 2 weeks, and he went in twice last week as well. Sebastian Chris, slowly coming back from that injury. I think we might see him have a big game here. Tommy Talau, Xavier Savage hasn't got over for a while. Ruben Garrick, then Ethan Strange, Luke Brooks, Jamal Fogarty, Dale Cherry Evans. Bit of experience there from Dale Cherry Evans. The kicking game, it's an important kicking game for both of them, Fogarty and DCE. Josh Papali'i up against Matthew Lodge. Tavaga up against Tommy Starling. Tommy Starling's been having the season of his life, honestly. Hudson Young, a little bit like Beau Fermor for the Gold Coast, is a little bit off colour since he came back from Origin. They didn't have both of those players didn't have great origins, I feel, and they haven't quite swung back into the round, the round proper. Zach Hoskins been playing outstanding lately. Michael Key-Chan, haven't seen that much of him. Corey Horsburgh and Jake Trebojevic. They're the matchups. And, of course, you got Owen Paddy. He came on last week and dropped the ball a few times. I was disappointed with Owen. Much better in dry conditions. We think it's going to be dry in Canberra, but I do suggest to you, before you put your bets on, have a look at the weather maps. Have a look at the weather maps and make sure you're not betting in total torrential conditions again. Manly aren't any good in the wet either, so put that down in your black book. Let's go across and have a look at the value here for the anytime try scorers. And it is, I'm just looking at the last time they met. Wow, Canberra were totally towed up last time they met Manly, 40-12, but that looks like it was either at 4 Points Park or the Brookie, I would suggest. Down in Canberra, different story. 40-12. Hopefully that doesn't get too much in the psyche of Canberra there, because Manly will be throwing everything at them. There's no doubt about it. I don't think it's going to be a runaway victory. I can't see it being that at this stage, unless Canberra put 4 or 5 tries on in that first half, and then just run away with it in the second half. I can't see it. I can see it being tight for most of this match. Okay, let's have a look. Xavier Savage runs up the bank here at $1.75. Trebojevic is good value if you want to chuck him in at 240. Timoko, 275. He's coming a bit skinnier after the last couple of weeks. Still great value there is Tolata Alcola at 275. We may even lead out with him. Simi Sasagi didn't get enough time, I believe, last week. And I put him in as one of the main bankers that destroyed us. I honestly thought he was going to get at least 30 minutes in the first half, and I think they just put him on before the end of the first half. It wasn't good. I think he should have been on there from the start. But anyway, we'll have to take him with a grain of salt. Corey Waddell, 450, hasn't got over for a while. Dale Cherry Evans hasn't scored for a while at 5-1. Tom Starling's good value there at 550. Let's lead out with Tom Starling for Canberra. He's always there, always looking for those loose balls. I have a feeling he will score here, and I want to lead out with him. So Canberra here, we're tipping at 1-12 and 13+. But I'm mainly sticking with the 1-12 here. Canberra 1-12. Tom Starling 550 as our first banker. As our second banker, we're going to come back towards a guy that has not let us down this year. Tolata Alcola for Manly at 275 is our other banker there. Then we'll come across to Kyo Weeks, even money. I'll take that all day as our third leg, Kyo Weeks. Our fourth leg, let's spin it back towards. Let's chuck in Turbo, scoring a freakish try at 240 as our fourth leg. Fifth leg, Ethan Strange. Can't leave Ethan out. He's been so good to us this year on anytime try scorer. And as our main reserve, I'm not having any other reserves in my mind. Zach Hosking at 3.25. There you go. There's the tips there for that game. And then we're going to spin over to the next game, which is the first of the Saturday games. There's 3 Saturday games: St George versus Cronulla, Dolphins versus Sydney Roosters, and Bulldogs versus the Warriors. And then there are 2 final games. Hopefully we get to them, with Parramatta up against North Queensland and Gold Coast against South. So let's move across here to the teams and have a look at this game. So the first of the Saturday matches, this is the old derby. The St George Dragons, or St George Illawarra Dragons versus Cronulla Sutherland Sharks. And the Sharks are very skinny here on Sportsbet at $1.43. St George here at $2.84. Let's have a look at the team list. Ins and outs are very important. Ben Murdoch-Masila is in for St George. Then you have Hayden Buchanan, also Lachlan Ilias. He was supposed to start last week. I don't remember hearing him being called. Locke Pacific Tonga, big fella. And then for the Sharks, Puru is in. Jaden Beryl, Mawin Hiroti, Samuel Stone Street, but he is still not getting that run by the looks of it. They're only benching him at this stage in the reserves. And Toby Rudolph as well. Outs for the Sharks is Jesse Colquhoun. So, or Colquhoun, how you want to pronounce that strange Irish Gaelic name or whatever. It's not my greatest strength there, but he is not playing anyway. The matchups here, it's Gutherson versus William Kennedy. Sione Katoa up against Sloan. Good matchup there. Moses Sully, who's been playing outstanding lately, up against Jesse Ramian. Then Sia Sifa Talakai. We had him last week. I might even bypass on this game as far as putting actually money down. I'll give you the tips. We might have even a quarter bet on this game, because I can't catch Cronulla. Every time I tip 2 or 3 really good players for Cronulla, they never go over. And the 2 that I've had the week before, they're the ones that go over. And they've both St George and Cronulla have killed me for most of this season. I can't tip either of these sides, but we're still going to go through it for you. If you've got a few extra dollars left over from the Friday night matches. Emre Gula played really, really. Still going to go through it for you. If you've got a few extra dollars left over from the Friday night matches. Emre Gula played really, really well last week in those wet conditions down at Wollongong. He's got a bit of a job to do up against Fanua Blake here. Blake Brayley, Jaden Cook, Damien Cook up against Brayley, sorry. And then you have Clemmer up against Kafusi. Leilua up against Nikora. Nikora's gone off colour too. I don't know what they're doing with him, but he's not getting fed the ball enough. And he used to run that beautiful line just on the edge. And he was one of our anytime try scorers, but has not gone over for maybe 4 or 5 games now. And I'm really disappointed by that fact, because when they put up $2.50, we'll take that all day. But if he's not scoring, then these odds are even going to blow out a bit deeper there. So anyway, let's go across. There's the matchups. So let's go across to the TAB and see what they're putting up here. So St George have come up head-to-head at 265, and it's at Cogra Jubilee. So mark that down. That Saints are a good wet weather side up against Cronulla, 140-48, who's played fairly well in the wet last week. That was horrendous conditions at Shark Park, being on the basin there of the swamp water of Kurnell. It gets fairly wet and fairly drenched out. So both sides are going to be able to handle the wet, and it is predicted showers over the weekend. Damn it! All right, so let's click on that and go to what happened last time. It was an easy victory for Cronulla, 30-18, and that was in round 15 of this year, not that long ago. 30-18. So a 12-point victory. And running 7th is Cronulla, so they're in the 8 and trying to get to the 8th. They're going to have to win every game, St George. It's a big effort for them. They're 8 points behind Cronulla there in 11th position. So let's go to the anytime try scorers here. And Ronaldo Molitalo is the hot favourite at $1.70. Terrell Sloan, $1.85. Katoa, $1.75. You honestly can't have a lead leg with those guys. If you do, you're really going to have to find your 4, 5-1 shots leading into them. But we never lead out here at every point's a winner for the anytime try scorer because it's just not good value. Odds on into odds on. It's not going to pay you much at all. You might be lucky to get $1.75, $2.10, and we need more value for the small amount of money we're putting down. As I said, Britton Nakora is 260. He has not gone over for at least 5 to 6 matches here. Jesse Raymond went over for a flukish try a couple of starts ago at 310. Talakai, I can't rely on him again. I'm going to try and put in someone that is more of a prolific try scorer. So we're going to lead out here with Matthew Fine, or Fige, as some people say. Matthew Fine at 365 for St George. And then we're going to chuck in a guy that I can't catch. I can't catch him. And it's Braden Trindle for Cronulla Sharks, 310. They're your 2 lead legs. Then we're going to chuck in Teague Wilton, the big fella, 350 for the 3rd leg for Cronulla. For our 4th leg, Adam Fanua-Blake, I can't catch him this year either. He did score the last match. He was on the burst, in the clear, no defence, 4-1, good value there. For our 5th leg, we had Nico Hines. He let us down last week, but he hasn't scored for the last 2 matches, but he scored 2 matches prior to that, back-to-back, week-to-week. 425 for our 5th leg. As an emergency, I just chuck in Kyle Flanagan or Sloan there on the wing at odds on. But, don't want to really go berserk on that match, that's for sure. There you go. I'm tipping. I honestly think Cronulla will still win that match, even though I think they've got too many points in them. Even though it is at Cogra Jubilee. And I would like to see St George win, but I'm going to tip Cronulla in the tipping competition in the Monster Cup over St George there at home. I think Cronulla got too much strike power, and it's going to be an interesting match. Hopefully it's not too wet so we can see some really good football. The next match is Dolphins versus Sydney Roosters. This is another tight match, and it's the bookmakers have made it fairly tight, virtually even money, both of them. The odds on at $1.80 there is Sydney Roosters. For Dolphins, 2-1. They lost one of their best players, and for mine, one of the best centres in the game, apart from Steve Crichton. They lost Herbie Farnworth last week when he broke down in that mid-run. And he'll be out for at least 5 to 6 weeks. Now, if they make the playoffs, we might see a return for Herbie Farnworth, but it's a matter of whether they make the playoffs. I think they will, but they're really going to have to show how good they are here. Last time they met, it was Roosters 36, defeating Dolphins 26. And we better have a quick look at the ins and outs to see if there's any clue to this match. And the second game, that first game, make sure that doesn't catch you by surprise with the St George Jubilee and Cronulla game, is at 3 o'clock. The next one's at 5:30. I wish they'd give us another 40 minutes instead of 30 so we can put our bets on without rushing. I really think it's difficult if you're still listening to the game and you're having to worry about, and you still need 1 or 2 try scorers for your 3-leggers or 2-leggers. It's difficult. They don't leave much of a gap. But anyway, it is what it is, and we do what we have to do, being mad fans. Now, ins for Dolphins, they've got Kenneth Bromwich back. That's a big help. Fini Fuliaki is back. Peter Hola and Naya Fahu by the looks of it there. Trey Fuller is back and Harrison Graham for the Dolphins. Then we had Blake Steep, Makatoa, Sandon Smith, Zach Docker-Clay is back for the Roosters there. Outs, of course, is Felice Kafusi with that suspension and Herbie Farnworth with the torn hamstring. Okay, let's have a look now at the matchups here. Tabuai Fado up against Tedesco. That's a great matchup, isn't it, really? Jermaine Asako against Tupou. Another great matchup. Max Fine up against Billy Smith. Robert Toya up against Nafahu. And then Avarillo. He's an outstanding player. He's up against Mark Nwanga-Nitawazi. And then we have Nikorima. Didn't look like he was stretching out last week, and that's fair enough. It was his first run back from a spell, and he was really struggling last week although he had a disallowed try, which cost us dearly here on every points a winner. I think he'll have much of a better game here, though he really needs to be careful about that hamstring. He's up against Hugo Sawala, and then Sam Walker up against Katoa. Great kicking game, Sam Walker. He destroyed Manly last week with his kicking game for Eastern Suburbs. Lindsay Collins, really good matchup against Mark Nichols. Some big forward pack here. Mollo up against White. Marshall King up against Watson. When he came on, he made a big difference, Watson, last week. And Luke Lewis was calling that on the radio. And as soon as he came on, he made a big difference. And then you got Kurt Donahue, who we had in a three-leg parlay last week, missed the try line by a few feet. I thought he was going to go over, but instead Jerry Marshall King went over, and it cost us $200 for a $2 bet. And Victor Radley there up against Donahue. He's been playing outstanding, Kurt Donahue, lately. And I just must say congratulations to Victor Radley, who continues to wear these headgear, because he's been really suffering from so many head knocks over the last 2 years. Okay, so let's go across now to the TAB, see if we can extract some value here. Tupou's leading up the market here with Mark Nwanga-Nitawazi at $1.75, Tupou $1.80, Hamaso Fado $1.85, Jermaine Asako $2.05, not too bad. And then Billy Smith at $2.70. Cody Nikorima, $3.25. Connolly Lemuelu, one of our favourite players here on Every Point's a Winner. Oren Keeley, $4.25. Let's stand out Oren Keeley for the Dolphins here at $4.25. I really like Oren Keeley, and that's great thick value there. Billy Smith at $2.70 for the East is our other banker. So our main two bankers there, Oren Keeley for the Dolphins and Billy Smith at $2.70 for the Sydney Roosters. Going to chuck in James Tedesco. I think he's going to have a massive game here at $2.40 for our third leg. For our fourth leg, we're going to spin it back towards the Dolphins and chuck in Connolly Lemuelu, who never lets us down here on Every Point's a Winner. And for our fifth leg, I don't want to jump in off the bandwagon for Angus Crichton, but we're going to at $3.75, always lethal near the ruck. And they could find a crack in the Dolphins' defence there. $3.75 is our fifth leg. And as our banker here, I'm going to chuck in, although he's doing most of the kicking game, I'm going to chuck in Sam Walker to score at $4.25 as our reserve, along with Kurt Donahue as our second reserve there. Okay, honestly think it'll be a very, very close game. I'd love to tip the Dolphins all day, especially being up there at Suncorp Stadium. Jake Avarillo is too short this week, I think. $2 even money. I can't really entertain him. And the Hammer and Tupou are just too skinny. I do like them, and I love Jake Avarillo as a player in general. I think this year's and next year is going to be outstanding for Jake Avarillo, and he's making every post a winner. All right, I'll be tipping there. I honestly want to tip Sydney Roosters up at Dolphins Stadium there. Without Herbie Farnworth, I think Sydney Roosters will show their professionalism and how serious they are at getting inside the top 8 and staying there. So it's a vital game. Could be very close. I can't see Dolphins running away with it unless Roosters just get blown off the park early, and I can't see that happening. Their defence was really good against Manly last week, but it was made to look a little bit better with Manly's poor ball handling. So there you go. That's game done and dusted. And the last game of Saturday night is Bulldogs and Warriors, and that's at 7:37. This would be at Accor Stadium, I'd imagine. Let's have a quick look at the TAB. And clicking on that game there. It's not actually saying, yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. Running a third on the ladder is Canterbury. They don't want to keep on losing to where they are. They were leading the competition earlier in the year. They had all those back-to-back wins, but as Scotty put it to me on the phone a couple of days ago, they really haven't beaten one of the top echelon sides. Not really. Anyway, the Manly game was probably about the best they played, and that was a couple of weeks ago. Last time they played it was Canterbury 30, putting it through the Warriors at 18. But that was at Go Media. That's strange. It was at Go Media Stadium. Yeah, okay. But this time the Warriors have got to travel. Not the greatest of travellers. They were early in the season, but with all the injuries, they got so many injuries, it's very difficult for them. I think Canterbury will bounce back. Just looking at the market here, we better have a quick look at the ins and outs, see if anything jumps out at us as far as our anytime try scorers are concerned. We don't want to just rush through for the sake of it. That game is at 7:35, as I said, and it is at Accor Stadium, and $1.37 to 3.10. So most of the pundits think that Bulldogs will bounce back. Looking at the team list ins and outs, Blake Wilson is back in, Saluka Fafita, Moran is back in, and Toby Sexton. He may just be on the reserve bench, unfortunately. Harris Tavita is back in with Bunty Afoa. Very good player, Bunty. Dimitri Viamunga, great player, big man, like a monster. Fisher Harris is back. That's a big inclusion for the Warriors. And Fatiala Lofa there is back in for the Warriors. Out, of course, is Jacob Laban. All right, let's go across to the thing that we really want here. It's anytime try scorer. Jethro Rinakama is hot favourite here at $1.80. It's a little bit of an open market. Blake Wilson, $1.85. Anari Tawala, 85. Dylan Watini Zalesniak's gone over his twice last weekend, 215. Jacob Kiraz, 220. Can't catch Jacob. Never have been able to catch Jacob. Every time I've had him, he won't score, and every time I don't, he does. So he went over the last three matches, so I obviously didn't have him. Roger Tuivasa Schick, 225. That's the best value you get for Roger for a long while. Usually Roger's long odds on. He's such a prolific try scorer. Though he didn't score last match, he scored 3 matches out of the last 4 prior to that. Edward Cozy, 250. Bronson Sherry, 260. Think he will need to lift here. Leka Halasema has scored every match since we've had him, and that's about 5 or 6 matches in a row. He's really good odds there at 3-1. Valami Kikau let us down last week, 310. Couldn't pick up his legs in the rain, and Canterbury had an awful game. Lachlan Galvin, 4-1. There's value across the park if you want it. Pompey at 425. Harris Tavita, 450. I'm tipping Bulldogs, so we're going to lead out with a Bulldogs try scorer. And we're going to go with Jacob Preston here as our banker, as our main banker for Canterbury. 260. Jacob Preston. I think he'll go over. Our lead banker for the Warriors is going to be Leka Halasema. I just think this guy's a freak of nature. I've been tipping him to you for a long time, since the start of the first round when they got whacked up and towed up by Canberra over in Vegas. Leka Halasema has been one of my favourite players since then. He's 3-1. That's really good value there. For our Third leg, we're going to chuck in Matt Burton at 325. I just got a feeling he's going to go for an intercept here, and he's going to change the face of the game at some stage. Matt Burton with an intercept try at 325 for our third leg. For our fourth leg, I'm tipping Tane Tuapiki 325. I think something similar where he's going to get a loose ball and he's going to go in. Tane Tuapiki. And then we're going to come back to Bronson Sherry for the Bulldogs as our fifth leg, Bronson Sherry. And as our sixth leg, and reserve here, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck at 225, and along with Adam Pompey, who's like 475. Really good value there for you with the Warriors versus the Bulldogs, especially with those two lead bankers. Okay, let's get across the last two matches before we wrap it up here on Every Point's a Winner. Thanks for joining us and putting your tips down. And if you want to add one or two of your tips in with our two standouts, I'm sure you're going to fare pretty well. Just remember, allow for checking the weather, because you'll know that this man's bets here at Every Point's a Winner, Axel, will be halving his bets if it's wet weather again. And it's predicted for all the Sydney games in any case. But the Gold Coast up fighting really between South and themselves, between the wooden spoon. And I think Newcastle's in the running for the wooden spoon as well, where the Tigers are out of danger at this stage. So that game is at 2:02. That's fairly early, and the last game on the Sunday is Parramatta and Newcastle at 4:07. Let's go across here to just making sure everything's recording and is online. Gold Coast and South, $1.62 Gold Coast, South 2.30. That's the skinniest they've been for a while. There is rumours that Mitchell will be coming into the game here. Let's confirm that according to the NRL.com website. And we'll just have another further check of the ins and outs once we get to the correct game. Ins at team list. Here we go. Ins and outs. For instance, back at fullback, it's Aidan Khan-Pereira is in. Chris Randall, Ryan Foran. I'd imagine that'll be the younger brother of Kieran. Tony Francis and Simpkins is back for the Gold Coast. Here, Brandon Smith may be coming onto the bench here, coming back from a very serious injury. Jamie Humphries is back, the international. Then Latrell Mitchell, Salisi Atata, Shaquille Mitchell, and Talanoa Penatani. I wonder if he's, I'm sure he'd be related to the NRLW, maybe his sister there, Penatani. Wouldn't be surprised. It's spelled exactly the same. If someone leaves a mention in the comment to confirm my curiosity there. Okay, so fairly good matchups. AJ Bremson up against Jai Gray, who tries his heart out all the time for his pocket size. Alex Johnson up against Jalen de Groot. Brian Kelly up against Isaiah Tass. Jojo Jafida up against Tallis Duncan, one of my favourite players for the South. And then Khan Pereira up against Bentley Harpe, had a big match last week. Kieran Foran up against Ashton Ward. Jaden Campbell up against Humphreys. And Mayaku Fuataka up against Jai Arrow. Futuaka. Then Sam Verrills, one of my favourite Gold Coast players, up against Havili. And then we have Jamin Jolliffe up against Sean Kippie. Chris Randall up against Ewan Aiken. Had a big game last week, Ewan. Bo Fermor up against Jacob Host. Cleese Huss up against Lachlan Hubner. And interchange there, Wiyaniki, Campbell Gillard pushed him back to the bench. Isaac Somolali. And then we have Josh Paxton, and then South on the other side there. Mademoiselles, LeBlanc, Brandon Smith, of course, and Thomas Fletcher. as the interchange bench there. Let's go across and see if there's any value here for us in the South and Gold Coast match. Head to head, I wouldn't be risking tipping either side of head to head, but we are going to tip Gold Coast here. I've got a feeling Jaden Kim was going to have another blinder again. The last time they were totally towed up by South up in the Seabus Stadium, 46-12. South over the Gold Coast there. That is an absolute toweling, isn't it? It really is. That was back last year, though, around the same time that was earlier. It was in June there. So whether you want to take that form into the game, it's up to you. Looking at geez, that's as skinny as you'll get. $1.40. I haven't seen a price like that for some time. So we certainly wouldn't be taking him. Something's come up on the screen I just got to get rid of. It's just an update. So we've got AJ Brimson at 205, Jalen DeGroot $1.65, Alex Johnson $1.70, Terrell Munro $1.90. Not bad value there, Terrell. And then you have Jaden Campbell at 275. Let's lead out with Jaden Campbell because I think he's going to have another blitzkrieg game. Jaden Campbell here at 275 is our lead banker. And then we're going to chuck in Tallis Duncan as our other lead banker. He's been playing outstanding for South, and he's good value too at 350. A little bit skinnier than what I would have liked. Usually he's around 4-1, but he's gone over 3 times out of the last 5 matches. Sam Verrills is our third leg here. Sam Verrills for the Gold Coast. I think he will go over. And we're also going to chuck in since we're tipping Gold Coast, we're going to chuck in AJ Brimson at 205 and Jojo Jafita as the 5th leg there, Jojo Jafita at 220. And I would have as the emergency Tyron Munro and Bentley Harpe, the other winger, both fairly skinny, but good reserves to have anyway. Let's move across to the next match. And here we are looking at North Queensland hanging on like half a drowned wombat, trying to get out of a swollen creek. I don't know what is in store for either of these sides, apart from the Parramatta are on the way up. It's been an outstanding season when you consider how poorly they started. It's been for Coach Riles. He's done an outstanding job with this side. Though I think last week they could have done with Dylan. They could have done with the guy who's going. There's so many Dylan Walkers, Dylan Edwards. Anyway, they could have done with him last week, but he's going to Newcastle, of course. Dylan. I can't even think of his surname at the moment. Let's get across to the market here. Parramatta $1.60, North Queensland $2.35. Okay, and this will be at Acor, will it not? Last time they played, as I would like to say, it was Parramatta 27, Gold Coast 20. North Queensland 20. So 7 points in it. Let's go to the TAB and look at the anytime try scorers. We'll have a quick look and see who's ins and outs for this last match here at the NRL. And going to move the page down here. This last game is at 4:05, so don't let that get under your guard there. The team list, ins and outs. Dean Keir is in for the Eels. Dylan Brown was the guy I was thinking of, Dylan Brown. He is in. Whether he gets a run as another, we'll have to look at the team list. And they do change before the game sometimes, which can really kill you, as we've already put our bets on. Kilma Tailagi, Volkman, Niwatale, and then Dunster is in for the Eels. Jake Clifford back for the Cowboys. That's a good inclusion. Jason Tamalolo, Nicholas Lamaz, Semu Vialame, and then Thomas McKaylee and Vilami Vialaya is in for the Cowboys here. Griffin Neem is out. Robert Darby Hi, Lisa. I'm in the middle of doing my program. Can I call you back? Okay. All right. Bye. All right. So just having a look here. That is who's in and out, and also Tuivasa and Sean Russell is out. That's a big loss for Parramatta. We'll have a look and see who's replacing him there. So it looks like Jordan Semrani. He's a pretty good replacement for Sean Russell, but Sean Russell's been working really good with that Josh Adokar. So hopefully Semrani just gels in there. Braden Burns up against Josh Adokar. Jackson Purdue needs to pick up his game. He was really awful last week. So was Zach Labour. But Zach Labour's gone to the wing here. That's interesting. Purdue goes to the centres. Vailea is coming back into the centres. That's why. Braden Burns, Tom Dearden, expecting him to have a better game here. Oh, this is a tough match. It really is. Jamin Hopgood, he had a horrible game with his handling. His defence was good, but I think he was top tackler for Parramatta last week. But Dylan Walker, he's a really good inclusion. Where's Dylan Brown placed? He's probably only going to be in the reserves looking at this. Yeah, he's this number 22 reserve. He won't be getting it unless there's a major injury. You won't see Dylan Brown. And I think he is who could have won it against Melbourne last week alongside of Moses. So that's a great matchup, isn't it? It is Moses up against, excuse me, it's Moses up against Tom Dearden. Two great players. Really looking forward to this match. It is going to be a top game, I believe. Don't let me put you off any of the teams that you like here. But I honestly think North Queensland have to win this one. Parramatta they came within 6 points of causing an upset there against the Melbourne Storm. Don't think Storm had the greatest game though, however. They had a lot of unforced errors. But this game, I'm going to give North Queensland one more chance and one more sniff here to beat Parramatta. I think Lomax will have a better game too, but he leads up the market here at $1.80 along with Josh Adokar at long odds on $1.75. Then you go back to Jason Barlow at $2.15. Vailame at $2.15. Josh Parlay $2.40. Drinkwater $2.50. Jordan Semrani $2.90. Let's lead out with Jordan Semrani here because that's really good value. Jordan Semrani is our first leg banker there for Parramatta. And then we're going to swing it over here to, I think this is the guy that's got to stand up, and it's Thomas Dearden. I think he has to lead the troops, and I think he might end up throwing a mad dummy and going over himself. Thomas Dearden there to score for the North Queensland Cowboys. So it's Sam running into Dearden. For the third leg, we're chucking in Jackson Purdue for the North Queensland Cowboys at 3-1 there. And then we're going to swing back for the fourth leg, Mitchell Moses. He hasn't gone over for a couple of matches, but I think this will be the game where he turns it around for his try scoring is concerned. Our fifth leg, Scott Drinkwater at $2.50. Really good value for your fifth leg. Our sixth leg, we're going to chuck in Zach Labour on the wing. He's still $2.10, so it's better value than odds on that you usually cop for a winger. And also Jackson Barlow there at $2.15 for the North Queensland Cowboys. The only other thing I would chuck in is your two odds on shots, Josh Adokar and Zach Lomax for Parramatta, if you had enough money going into that last game. So, ladies and gentlemen, thanks very much for joining us here. As I said, I think I wouldn't be shouting at you if you're going to tip me Parramatta and be very strong about tipping me Parramatta, especially at home. But it's a game where North Queensland must stand up. Please, ladies and gentlemen, hit like, subscribe there, then share. We need to get, we're building up our subscribers. I think we're nearly up to 290 now, 390. So keep subscribing. And the more we subscribe, the more games we'll be able to call for you on free to air. We will call games throughout the final series. I've just got to speak to our other commentator, Scott Pearce-McLeod, about the logistics of doing that. We might even get a couple of sideline eyes coming in here to help us out for those final series, whether it be male or female, people that love the NRL game here at Every Point's a Winner. Thanks for joining us. Best of luck. Half your bets. If it's rainy, half your bets. And for the St George and Cronulla game, I'll be lucky if I put a cent on that game. I can't catch any of the try scorers. We did snag Corey Allen last week down in that windy Wollongong Stadium. But, I honestly can't catch any of the doubles or trebles there for Cronulla and St George. So I'll be halving my bets again. And if it's going to be rainy, down at Jubilee there on the weekend, just be really, really careful. Be aware of that. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Big shout out to the boys there, down there at Nova. And I'm talking about, there's a few boys down there. A big hello to all the boys down there. They know who they are. And Omar is one of them. And they're crazy for the Bulldogs. Hopefully, the Bulldogs bounce back this week. And to the wife, the late wife, she'd be very, very happy if they did. All right, ladies and gentlemen, until next week, we will be having probably a review on Monday. Best of punting, and hopefully we come back with the bickies. Just go easy and always bet responsibly here on Every Point's a Winner. Until next week, have a lovely rugby league weekend from tonight.